Hi, and welcome. Another exciting episode of Hidden Truth News. And boy, some of this stuff has really been hidden. I'm very honored to bring on our guest today. We're going to call him Ron for the sake of anything else. And Ron, I just want to give you a little bit of a intro on this. But you say the purpose of self-governance gurus, which is your brand name, Self-Governance Gurus, educational platform, is to create and curate credible information to assist men and women to realize and defend their inherent sovereignty. People cannot have rights without being responsible. I love that word, responsible, able to respond. Mm-hmm. When those rights are challenged, this is the essence of self-governance. Welcome, right. Ron.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. You know, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Right? It's all out there. It's all out there for us to find, but it's hidden to a certain extent. We just need to know where to look and how to see it. Right?
Let me ask you this, Ron. Now, we're going to find out in more detail right now what Self-Governance Gurus really is and the work that you do. But how did you ever get involved with this?
Well, it was not intentional. It's been, I guess I've been called, right, or directed, or however you want to think about it. I'm a successful entrepreneur. I've been running businesses and whatever for a long time, and I love to teach as well. I've taught almost everything over the course of the last 30 or 40 years. And the election, the COVID and the election was that kind of like the crack in the wall for me. And then it just got wider and wider, and seeing how corrupt everything was. And in particular, the way that the election, the aftermath, right? It was analyzed and evaluated, and the media coverage. It just became very clear that this was not right. So one thing led to another, and one thing led to another, and one thing led to another, and I discovered this thing called a state national, and this concept being state national, being a state citizen, and that was the beginning of this journey, understanding why that is so profound, and the distinction between state and federal is pretty much everything. And it's something that a very, very, very small number of people truly comprehend, and how profound that is. And we can talk more about that. But
yeah, Ron, in your own words, what is a state national? I think some people would know about it and some people don't. But it's certainly becoming, let's just say, a movement. I know when we started working in this arena about 3.5 years ago, there supposedly was about 40,000 people, and now there's over 3 million at the latest, and it's really growing rapidly. So what is a state national, just in your words?
Well, okay, so we have to first scroll back to understand, what does United States mean? Okay, so United States can mean 4 different things. There are 3 things that Hubin and Allison in the Supreme Court talks about in Hubin and Allison, the 1945 case. It's Hubin and Allison versus EBAT, and then of course there's a 4th thing, which is the corporation. So United States can mean 4 different things. It can mean states united, united adjective states plural. It can mean United States singular proper noun, which is federal territory. It's DC, Guam, Puerto Rico, and so on. It can mean United States of America in international relations, and it can mean a federal corporation, which is Title 28, 3002, 15A. So you have to be very careful when you say United States citizen. Well, what does that mean, right? What does United States mean? So the Constitution talks about citizens of states, and it talks about citizens of the states united. It uses the term United States, but so a citizen, and again, you have to use the dictionary. You have to use the right dictionary for the document that you're analyzing. So a citizen, in the context of the Constitution, which you'd use, Webster's 1828 for example, is simply a free inhabitant, right? Someone who has all the rights of an inhabitant of a place. So a state citizen is someone who is born in or naturalized to the land of a state of the Union. Okay, so now because the word citizen has become so corrupted, we now oftentimes use the word state national instead of state citizen, but that's what it is. That's what it means. It's a state citizen, as opposed to a federal territorial citizen. So there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood. So this is where I beg to differ with the numbers, and I don't agree with some of the people who are promulgating those numbers. Maybe that's the number that have declared their status, whatever, I don't know. But there's 325 or 350 million state nationals in our country right now. And the number you're referring to is how many who have allegedly declared their status with the Secretary of State, and that's fine. That's a good thing to do. I encourage that. We teach a class on that, actually. But even if you haven't done that, you're still a state national if you're born on or naturalized to the land of the state of the union.
Yeah.
So
try telling that to a policy enforcer.
They don't like that. And of course, they're not taught that stuff because they're federal, right? They don't
actually.
They're
What I heard, Ron, is that from the top on down, the FBI actually, maybe CIA, put out misinformation saying there's such a thing as a sovereign citizen. Yeah. And of course, that is a conflict of terms there because of citizen. If you remain as a citizen, then you are a ward of the state where you don't own your property, your business, or your children. And that's why a lot of this is being done.
It depends upon what dictionary you're using and what documents you're using, right? So citizen has gotten a bad term because the United States citizen, which is a federal territorial citizen, you're exactly right, is property. That's the Wheeling versus, I can't remember what Supreme Court case, a long time ago. United States federal territorial citizens are property and franchises of the federal government, even when they're residing in states of the union.
Yeah. Right.
Now, state citizens are in fact sovereign. And the sovereign citizen, and again, we don't use the word citizen, but they are, right? Yes. I could spend an hour. In fact, that's actually in my self-governance sound bites. That's soundbite 3 and 4. It goes through all that case law.
Gotcha. Yeah.
States of the union, not federal territory. So
right.
that distinction is so fundamentally different. That's like night and day, right? It's like slave versus
exactly. So yeah, that's what they're being fed. The policy enforcers on the street that another one of those sovereign citizens, so they can railroad you. So anyway, that's let's go to the ingredients of self-governance gurus. How did you come up with that name, and why are you calling it gurus?
Well, so again, going back to the first principles, sadly, the level of scholarship and the level of professionalism in our patriot community is very low. It's very low. There's a lot of claims out there that can't be supported. There's a lot of hypotheses about what you should do that don't actually work very well. And that's a real frustration. And so people who have some discernment are left, what do I do? Right. And whose idea? There's this idea and that idea. What do I do? And everybody's kind of almost paralyzed. And a lot of people, and I'm one of them, actually have wasted a lot of time and gotten in a lot of trouble because I didn't have good discernment and I followed advice that was not that sound. And so, by the way, that's one of the reasons I'm so glad to have met Americans in Action. You guys do an amazing job. And that relationship, which we've had now for 6 or 7 months, has really been wonderful.
Thank you. We've enjoyed it ourselves. Thank you.
So the idea was to bring together, to actually curate, to actually bring together the best information that's out there on self-governance, broadly speaking. So that's not just the kind of the legal stuff, but it's also, for example, how do you deal with chemtrails, and how do you deal with the EMF radiation and 5G? Because that's also a control. That's a different form. It's a kind of a techno-tyranny. It's a different form of control structure, control mechanism over everybody, vaccines and whatnot. So they're related. But what we're finding is that we're having to actually create a lot of the content ourselves. That was not the original plan. But as we look around and try and find, people who can actually talk on these things, these subjects, it's very difficult to find people who I actually would trust for myself. And that's the standard that my partner and I have, is that if we don't do it ourselves, we don't use it ourselves, and we're not going to bring it to people.
That's for sure. Yeah, everything that we do in Americans in Action, the rest of the team, Ananda, Jason, Maddie, Clark, is just pretty amazing in first applying it in our own situations, our own life, and seeing that it wins, that it works, and then anything that we share with other people in the assistance of counsel hat, that comes from our own experience with it. So we're very excited about doing that all the time. And you learn so much. I mean, you hear horror stories around the country because people from around the world have been contacting us, and you as well, Ron. And so it's to feed them the truth is just a wonderful experience, is it not?
You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Mm-hmm.
So a guru is the definition that we're using is an intellectual guide, but can also be a spiritual guide on matters of fundamental concern. And what can be more fundamental than your inherent sovereignty? Right?
That's right. Exactly.
And
so, go ahead.
No, go ahead. And self-governance it's all about it, right? Either you self-govern. So it's self-governance or not is actually a choice, and it's actually an outcome. So either you self-govern, or you will be governed, right?
That's right.
There's no other way around it, right? It's not like you can not self-govern and then not be governed. It's like that's what's going to happen.
It goes back to the word responsibility. You're either going to take responsibility for your situation, or they're going to take responsibility for you, and that's where you get railroaded into all their statutes and craziness over there. So exactly. So now, how do they find you? What's your how can you want to get that information out? I think it's important.
Yeah, well, we have Twitter and also Truth Social. You can look for self-governance gurus, and then also there's videos, the self-governance sound bites, and the Wednesday what the beeps. So they're on YouTube and Rumble and BitChute. And so I'll just search for self-governance gurus, and also on Coursizio we have some classes that we teach.
So with the self-governance gurus, could you share with the audience as an experience that you had, of course, leaving the names out to protect the innocent, of how you help someone with some situation?
Well, the great thing again, it's all about the truth. Right? The minute you know the truth, you can ask questions, because everything that the Matrix is doing to you, right? It's all fabrication. It's all an illusion. It's all a lie, actually.
Now, when you say that, are you talking about corporate United States?
Yeah, I'm talking about United States. I'm talking about the state of Washington. It's all the same. It's all federal.
Okay. Yeah, they're all corporations, right?
The minute you know the truth, you can ask questions that they can't answer. So the beautiful thing is to simply say, "Hey, I received this. You claim that I owe you some obligation," right? And saying, "Well, that's great. I would certainly be happy to fulfill any lawful obligation that I have, provided you can actually, substantiate the claim. And so, can you please answer this question, this question, this question?" Right?
And they can't.
Never do. They never do. In fact, what you should really do is say you do under penalty of perjury, right? But you don't even have to do that because they don't want to put their name on it. They won't put their name on it. I always demand that at minimum they respond with a wedding signature. And
right, yeah, and I find that the response often is they'll send one of their underlings or one of their new people that's a customer service or something when they send anything back to you, because they don't want their name on it because they know that they're involved with some form of fraud.
Think about it. The way for people to think about it, because this is probably overwhelming for a lot of people, is that, and again, I would look at my Sunday soundbite 3 and 4, okay, for the details. But you are a king or a queen. If you're in a state of the union, not anywhere else, sorry, but you're a king or a queen. That's black letter law in our country. It's as simple as that. So if anyone is claiming you have an obligation to them, they're actually asking you to volunteer. They're trying to coerce you, trick you, whatever, into volunteering, wear you down, whatever it is. It's always the same. Because if you start from the premise that you are a sovereign, that you are a king or a queen, you have no obligations to anyone except not harming them. Right? So then the question is, what is the trick? What is the trick that they're using to get me to volunteer for this obligation that they claim I have? Right? And it's always the same.
It is the same, and they trick you in so many ways because we have been used to, and when I say we, talking about, of course, all of us, but our parents, their parents, so forth and so on, all the way back to at least 1871, maybe earlier. And so, we just are so obedient because we want to do the right thing. But little do we know, or a lot of people don't know yet, that we actually have a rogue government at hand, and we call them the Biden crime family, everything that he's doing is either a felony or being in treason, and people, the DOD, the DOJ, they're allowing it to happen. They're not coming down.
Well,
he should have been arrested or impeached a long time ago.
But remember, Congress and to a certain extent, so that's Article 1, and to a certain extent the executive branch have pretty much unlimited authority in federal territory. Okay, so
right.
Pretty much everything there, and this is what people do not understand. I see this 100 times a day. They can do pretty much anything they want in federal territory.
Yep.
But the question is, where do you live, and who are you? Right. So if you're a federal territorial citizen and you're volunteering to be a federal territorial citizen, right, and you're act as, right, and you're volunteering to live or reside in federal territory, like the state of Washington or the state of California, it's federal territory, right? Then what are you, right? Are you subject to those laws? Like you are, right? Now, if you realize who you are, you're a state citizen, you live in state territory like the California Republic or Washington or Oregon or Texas Republic, then you're not. And the Constitution's crystal clear on that distinction. Ever since Downs versus Bidwell in 1901, the other insular possession cases, the Supreme Court has ruled that there's no constitutional protections in federal territory. It's subject to the plenary authority of Congress and the dictatorial powers of the executive branch.
And a lot of things that we do, we don't even realize that puts us in that jurisdiction of federal territory, such as, what do you have to say about if somebody is voting in the election?
Then they're basically adhering themselves to they're engaging in federal territorial elections.
Exactly. So see, volunteer right there.
Right.
And, I mean, DMV.
Same thing. That's again, it's how do you write your address, right? If you write your home address as WA or CA, right, and with a zip code, that's federal territory. Who created it? The federal government created that, right? That's CA is not the California Republic. That's the state of California.
Right, exactly.
And by the way, it's just as an aside, since we're talking about the state of Washington, state of Oregon, state of California, state of Texas, take a look at Ted Cruz's Senate Twitter account. Does Ted Cruz represent the Texas Republic or the state of Texas? You'll see it's the state of Texas, right? Most of the senators know they're either too dumb or they know the scam. They don't actually, they say like, they make something that doesn't mean anything. But he's crystal clear about it. And what's the state of Texas? The state of Texas is a corporation.
Right.
All these states, state of, they're all corporations. And by the way, we have researchers who've been looking. We cannot find the articles of incorporation anywhere for any of these state corporations.
Yeah, because they buried them.
Yeah, we asked here in Washington. We asked the state historian. Asked the feds. We went and asked the feds. Right. We looked in Companies House UK. It's not there. So we don't know. So we don't know who. So who created it? What are the articles of incorporation? Who created it? Who controls it? Who owns it? Right.
I know that's true. Anything that they don't want out that would be in favor of the American people, we the people, anything at all, they will hide and get rid of, such as the 13th Amendment.
The original one, yeah. By the way, we're trying to get a certified copy of the original one. We're still working on that. It's very important for us to know that. The only amendments that matter to us state citizens are the ones up until before 1861. And that's the original 13th Amendment. Everything after that was ratified. If it was ratified,
exactly.
The question. If it was ratified, it was ratified by the state of, and it's not applicable in state territory. It's applicable in federal territory. These are all federal entities.
So now we can tell with talking with you, you're very versed. How long have you been doing this?
Well, I learned quickly, and I'm doing this almost full time. And I've taken on some really big, kind of hairy, scary projects, as Jason knows.
Right.
And you know too, right? So I learned very, very quickly, and I have a team to help me, like you guys. But it's only a couple of years, and really, I've been teaching this stuff kind of full time now for a year or 15 months, something like that.
Right, right. And how's the reception of it?
Well, it's fascinating. A lot of people know something's wrong, But when they're confronted with the actual reality of the responsibility of self-governance, even on their own, so there's individual self-governance and there's collective self-governance. And we can talk more about that. Even just individual self-governance. It's a huge undertaking. It's a completely different way to think about your place in the world and the level of responsibility that you have for yourself. And a lot of people don't want that. So I'm finding that there's a very small number of people who have both the will and the competence and the time, energy, right, to undertake this task. It's very sad. And I'm sure that's by design, right? So if they're constantly taxing you and they're constantly inflating the cost of stuff and they're constantly making it hard to do this, that, and the other thing, then they're making it, you don't have bandwidth anymore, especially if you got a family, to take on this re-education task, essentially the self-imposed re-education task of learning how to be a king or a queen. It's not a simple thing.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that have taken that into their being and lifestyle, operating as a king, operating as a queen. I even know some kings that are queen. And so, no, they're very nice. And so, yeah, it's quite a journey. If anything, with this whole fake COVID scam, look what it has done. It brought out so many people to discover the truth that has been hidden for so many years. And that's the greatness of this. And this is what I feel, that the truth will always win. The truth is God, always will win. And we just have to, again, apply responsibility. It blows me away, especially an example of Arizona. The deception and the criminality and the connection with drug cartels feeding Katie Hobbs. And she's so criminal. And yet that Judge Thompson acted in treason, lying to the American people, favoring Katie Hobbs. And, it's like, where's the Arizona people? There should be hundreds of thousands of Arizona people at the and he's saying, we do not accept this. We do not consent with this.
But why do we care? Why do we care? That is a federal territorial election with federal territorial agents, and the feds can do whatever they want. And if we're state citizens, why do we care?
Well, the reason that on that, for me anyhow, it would have been let's say, icing on the cake. It would have been a very favorable situation if Kari Lake did get in. And you never know what Kari Lake may do. She may want to make that whole Arizona a republic.
Well, that's okay, fair enough. But but now this is interesting.
Yeah.
Does the state of Arizona, incorporated, have the authority?
Yeah.
Have any authority whatsoever to do anything at all related to the Arizona Republic?
No, that she has to. Defunct that. She has to get rid of that corporation.
Read that, but show me a conservative Republican. Show me one in the last 161 years who's actually wanted to educate, who actually wanted to get rid of the de facto and actually reestablish and help us reclaim the Republic.
There is one. They killed him, though. I forgot his name.
Right. So like Ted Cruz, for example, I pick on Ted Cruz because I don't want people to think that I'm some crazy mega Republican. I pick on him because he's a really easy target, and it actually makes the point that this is not about left or right. It's not about Democrat versus Republican. This is about federal versus state.
Right.
So he's a representative of the state of Texas, and every 6 months he goes, abolish the IRS. Okay, great, Ted. Well, why? Why do we care? Show me something. Show me anything in the Title 26 United States Code, which is the Internal Revenue Code. Show me something in there that makes any state citizen liable for any tax.
Exactly.
You can't do it. Exactly. I write them a letter. Hey, show me that. I'm really curious. You say you should abolish the IRS, but how about instead you just tell every state citizen, there's 350 million of us, right, that doesn't apply to you. There's no such thing as an income tax. Why don't you just say that? There hasn't been an income tax in this country since 1954, January 1st.
Right.
Right? The Supreme Court ruled on that. It's voluntary in 1958 in Florida versus United States. It's crystal clear. It's black letter law. Right?
Plus, people don't realize that the Federal Reserve and the IRS are not government agencies. They're privately owned corporations for profit. Guess who gets the profit?
Exactly. Not us, right? Yeah, so you can call, and that goes back to my earlier point, right? Once you know, and by the way, I realize I'm making a whole bunch of claims here. We don't have time to get into it. The evidence is in my sound bites. I don't stand up and make claims I can't back up.
Right. That's very important.
It's not the setting. A lot of people do that, right?
Evidence and application.
That's right. Yeah. So if someone wants me to back, just like somebody, I say, prove it, right? They're all federal. I'll prove it, right? I can do that. I can show you exactly where it is in the RCWs and every other state's exactly the same way.
Now, I realize that since you mentioned the IRS and that situation, that there's no such thing as income or income tax. And so why don't you tell us about, if you might, I know that you sent an amazing letter to them, and tell us about your journey with the IRS and where you stand with it and how you can help people in regards to any fraudulent IRS attempt to extort money.
Well, there's two things. You can respond to them, or you can proactively you can interact with them in a proactive way to form a good faith belief about what yours is. I can't tell you what your liability is. You have to decide for yourself, right?
Yes.
But I can teach you how. I can teach you a way, right, to form that belief, and I can point different evidence and give you different evidence. So, and that's why I teach a class. It's called Decode the Code. I teach you how to decode the code. It's not me saying it, right? It's you saying it. You forming your own belief and interacting with the IRS in an honorable way to determine that, right? I can't do that for you.
Hey, that's right. Just let me put in there, that's what an assistance of counsel is. You're not defending him in any way, shape, or form like a bar attorney would, but you're assisting him and feeding him the truth that has been hidden for years in order for them to make a stand. Is that correct?
Well, I can help them know what questions to ask. Right? I cannot give people an answer. I think, and by the way, I don't think it's a good idea, even if I could, because then I'm not enabling. The whole point is to enable people to be sovereign. So here's a question: right? What section of Title 26 makes me liable for income tax? Right. That's a really important question. In fact, everybody should ask their if they have a CPA, does their taxes, ask them that question, see what they say.
Yeah.
What section of Title 26 United States Code makes me liable for income tax?
Did you have a multitude of answers, or did 100% of them not answer?
Mine fired me.
Fired you as a client?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fired me. Right. So there's my answer, right?
So he knew it all along, and now that you were calling him out on it, he doesn't want to be held liable. So right. Gotcha. That's what they do.
They mistakenly think that if they stop serving you at that point, they no longer have any liability. But the question is, hey, you've been doing this for 15 years, right? They have a duty to know the law, and they have a duty to serve your interest, not the IRS's interest.
Now, let me ask you this. There's been people over the ages that have stood or defended or whatever, and they said the same thing, no income tax and everything, and the IRS railroaded them through the bar courts. How do you not get railroaded?
Well, you have to have a good faith belief. Okay, you have to have a good faith belief ahead of time.
It's got to live here.
Yeah, well, that's true, and then you have to get them to agree. Right, and then you also a lot of these people, what happens is they argue. Patriots love to argue. They say, "I'm so smart. Oh, you're wrong."
Fighting, yeah.
You can't fight. You cannot fight. You cannot argue. You have to stay in honor. So that's, you either accept the claim against you or you have a conditional acceptance. I will honor any obligation that I have as long as you can substantiate the obligation. And
that you have jurisdiction over this. What gives you jurisdiction?
Well, that's part of it. That would be one of the questions you could ask, for example, right? So for example, let's go back to territorial jurisdiction, right? Let's talk about taxes, right? So a lot of times you'll see propaganda that the 16th Amendment allowed a direct tax. It's like, no, it didn't. So the Brushaber case in 1916, remember the Internal Revenue came in right around then, and the 16th Amendment was supposed to address the Pollock case, which was 1895, where it was income tax was ruled unconstitutional. And so they had the 16th Amendment, which has kind of vague wording in it. We don't need to get into that. But in the Brushaber case in the Supreme Court in 1916, they said, no, the 16th Amendment did not repeal the the prohibition in Article 1, Section 9, I think, on there being direct taxes. A tax on your labor, which is your property, is a direct tax. It's a direct tax. It's a bill of attainder. It's a Fifth Amendment violation, right? It can't do it. So you have to know that. Okay, this is another point. Another thing the patriots don't get right is they don't think they have to know laws. Like, I know that applies to me. I'm a
Right.
Wrong.
Right.
Unfortunately, because they're constantly offering you the ability to contract, they're constantly, hey, volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. You have to know the law. You have to know the law. It's as simple as that.
And when you're saying law, you're not meaning statute law.
Yeah, you have to know that too. Sorry.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you have to know that too, and you have to know this. In particular, you have to know Supreme Court cases on various things, right? So there's a Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's your friend. Okay, I can tell you right now. Supreme Court has done a really good job over the years of making all this stuff clear. And it's all there for us, but we have to know, we have to educate ourselves. And that's one of the problems with a lot of these patriots is they just make these claims and they can't back it up, even though it's true.
Right. That's right. Now, so someone can contact you and take a course on this, correct?
I teach a course that's called Decode the Code. And the reason I don't call it Stop Paying Taxes is because that's not my job. You have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Moreover, everything that you learn in analyzing whether you can form your own good faith belief about whether you have a tax liability or not. It's the same stuff to analyze any code. So I actually go through territorial jurisdiction. I go through the Federal Register Act. I go through a whole bunch of Supreme Court stuff. I go through this, that, and the other thing, right? And you have to know these things.
So that's essential for you to stand as opposed to defend. That's essential.
Yeah, it's like this is, you just have to know it.
Now,
right? So, for example, most people don't realize that a statute standing alone imposes no obligation whatsoever. How many people out there know that? There has to be a corresponding published substantive federal regulation to make that statute have any effect whatsoever on you, right?
That's right.
You have to know how to decode the code. You have to know where do you look for the Federal Register Act? What's the corresponding federal regulation? And once you know that, that's how you decode the tax code. None of it applies. There's no federal regulation. Supreme Court's ruled on that again and again and again. And again, you have to know all this stuff.
Yeah. And that goes to show you that the number one question that you should be asking yourself is, who am I? Because you have to know who you are in order to be on solid foundation when you stand. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's why the other course that we teach is it's a status class, right? It basically goes into that. Who are you, right? How do you know? And that's also why I'm creating these videos because I need to reach a bigger audience than I can just by teaching.
Of course.
And a state citizen is the only, or state national, whatever you want to call it, is, as far as I know, the only man or woman in the entire world that has unalienable creator-derived, creator-endowed rights and is actually truly sovereign as a matter of black letter law. I could be wrong, but I don't know any other country on the earth who has that gift. The other thing, by the way, is our Declaration of Independence. People think, oh, it's a beautiful document. No, it's actually law, right? Volume 1, U.S. Code, front matter, organic laws, Declaration of Independence, Articles of Incorporation, Articles of Confederation, Constitution, and Northwest Ordinance. That's the law. And so there's no other law that can be inconsistent with any of that in states of the Union, but it doesn't apply in federal territory necessarily.
So with all these things that Biden's doing, trying to make the WHO be in charge of our medical status when their new pandemic comes out, and any other thing that he's doing that's or any one of them, or laws that they have passed that are anti-constitutional, original Constitution. Is it true that we don't have to follow them based on that?
Well, let's talk about the principle. There's the principle and there's the practice, right? So the principle would be in federal territory, they can do pretty much anything they want. So that this will be an Article 2 power, right? He's trying to exercise an Article 2 power. That's the executive branch. So you should go and look and see, okay, well, what powers does he have under Article 2 of the Constitution? So that may actually work for employees of the government, right? Or it might even work in federal territory if there's actually an Article 2 power for the president that might actually hold in federal territory. But it can't hold in states of the union, unless there's actually some authority for that, and it has to be consistent with the Constitution. And it's not.
Right, exactly. Now, and
this happens over and over and over again. The outrage of the day. Now, last time it was the pistol braces. The ATF is going to do that. Well, yeah, really? Great. Well, show me Article 1. That's an Article 2. It's an Article 2 agency. Show me. Where does it say in Article 2 that applies? Well, it doesn't.
Right.
See, once you get the difference between federal territory and state territory, all this stuff just goes poof.
Wow. That is awesome. And that's included in your course that people are going to find out about that so that they know the truth.
That type of thing. Yeah. The Supreme Court has ruled on federal territorial jurisdiction. There's so many cases you can't even, right? The federal government has no power in states of the union. But what is the state of Washington? What is the state of California? What is the state of Oregon? What is the state of Utah? That's not the state of the union, right? That's a corporation. It's a federal corporation.
You know, we found out that some, when people decide to go to court, when that agency is after their money, they found out that they actually put down on the papers that the defendant was living in Guam and not a U.S. citizen, all kinds of fakery and fraudulent things. And they bring that to court as if it's true. And if you don't know that and debunk that, then it stands as true.
Especially if you hire a bar attorney, you're just totally screwed. And you never want to get there. Because these are federal territorial courts. These are federal territorial agencies. It's all federal. You don't have any constitutional protection. Don't go over there and start claiming, constitutional rights. You don't have any. Just get used to it, right? It's commerce. The other thing about these, and this is why, so you do not have to, because you're a state citizen, if you were born and naturalized to the land of a state or the union, you're a state citizen. However, because of this matrix, this environment that we're in, it's a really useful thing to actually have declared your status and have that be a matter of public record. Then you've got the killer argument, right?
And record it, yeah.
Yeah, you record it, right? It's published. So you're not surety for any all caps name. You live in a state of the union. You've always lived in a state of the union. You're naturalized to it, and you're a living man. You're not a corporation, and you're a state citizen, right? And those are the key things. And when you have that on the public record, it's just devastating for anybody who makes claims against you.
So what happened I'm going to go back a little bit, 1913, the Federal Reserve Act, when they brought in the IRS. Tell me about that. How did that happen? Why did it happen at that time?
Well, they can do it. It's all federal, right? They can do whatever they want to in federal territory.
Right.
By the way, let's have some fun with this. This is how pervasive it is, right? So if you get a bill for your property tax, right?
Property tax.
Right. So what currency is that? What's the unit of account?
Right. What's the specie of money?
Right. What is that? It goes like that, right? It's a Federal Reserve note.
Right.
Well, Article 1, Section 10, no state shall make anything with gold and silver tender in payment of debt. So how can they do that? How can the county of so-and-so, right? The county of Pierce, county of Snohomish, county of King, whatever. How can they do that if they're a state agency, right? That's a violation of Article 1, Section 10. So write them a letter and ask them, hey, why, right? And then they'll write back and say, no, you got to pay it. You got to pay it in Federal Reserve notes. And if you don't, we're going to take your property.
Right.
Well, let's use that example and analyze how they can do that. Well, if you own a warranty deed, where is your residence? Right? And if you'll look carefully on there, it'll say, like in my case, for example, this land, right, is situated in the county of King and in the state of Washington. Well, where's that? County of King's a corporation, state of Washington is a corporation, so my land is a legal fiction that's in some filed, it's in a filing cabinet somewhere in federal territory, right? So the federal government has the authority to tax property in federal territory. Now, the minute you get a land patent, your home is now an appurtenance on the land, and that land is in the state of the union. It's sovereign territory because it was a grant from the United States. The United States was sovereign. So the question then is, what Article 1 or Article 2 authority is there in the Constitution for a federal government agency County of King, State of Washington, whatever, tax land in State of the Union. Show me. Where is it? Right.
Right.
And by the way, if they're going to do it, they have to, right? Now they can, right? It's simple. So many of these things go away once you realize this distinction is foundational. A lot of patriots focus on the all caps name and issues related to that, and that's really useful. But the first thing you have to clarify is what we talk is it's that because you can't solve that problem until you realize whether am I in state territory as a state citizen, or am I a federal citizen in federal territory? This is the foundation of everything.
You really got to be studied. You really got to get this information down in order for you to be competent in your stand. Otherwise, boy, they just railroad you if they see any weakness at all.
Yep.
That's why you and I are studying every day and applying the information, because we're constantly the student and find out new things all the time.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And it's also why I think what you do and what I do is we help people ask better questions.
That's right. Exactly.
It's not our role to tell them the answer. It's not our role to represent them. They have to present themselves. They have to be themselves, and they have to know what questions to ask.
Well, they have to stand. We say you can't represent yourself. You are yourself. So, and standing is so different than defending. As soon as you defend, you're actually declaring that you're guilty, because if there was nothing there, what would you be defending? But standing is a whole other thing that actually comes from the Bible, to stand. And that's what people living in the private, or another way of saying that, in the kingdom of heaven, I like to say, is how to stand. And it's exactly right, Ron. We supply them with questions that they can ask, and of course they will never answer, because if they did, they would be declaring the fraud that they're involved with, or the fictitious standing that they have, and they want you to volunteer to it. What were you going to say?
Yeah, volunteering again. Yeah, I have a love-hate. Personally have a love-hate relationship with this concept of fraud. And there's pure fraud and there's constructive fraud. So the question is, what fiduciary duty do they have, or what's their intent? It's hard to know. But if you really look, once you actually see the nature of the efforts that they have to get you to volunteer, you actually realize that they always tell you, right? So, for example, in the Form 1040 instruction booklet, and on last year it was page 107. There's a notice back there, and there's a missing children's person ad on this page, and on this page, the next page is another missing children's ad, person ad. But and what does it say at the top? Is disclosure, and everything that you need to know is right there. Now it's a little bit hard. You have to kind of decode it. And that's why I call it decode the code. But
right.
But the disclosure is right there. They tell you. You don't have to respond unless we tell you that's whether it's voluntary or mandatory. Well, if they look at a form 1040, does it say voluntary or mandatory on it? No, it doesn't. So what does that mean? Does that mean it's not voluntary or mandatory? Well, it's voluntary, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that the thing is, because we're on the same page with that. Whenever we deal with anything, whether it's our own cases or we're assisting people, we always declare we're not fighting this. We're a friend of the court. We're not an enemy of the state, and the court never makes a mistake. But when people hear that, they look at all the tyranny, all the lying, all the acts and statutory laws that are against people's freedom. They go, well, wait a minute. I didn't know all this. Take, for example, the, Sesta QV Trust and that trust situation. Well, the whole setup, they started it, so they own it and they run it and everything. But the fraudulent part of it is that they're making all this money from international commerce and trading with your all caps name, and they don't let you know that. And so it's like, I ease their mind when I say, look, we know that things aren't right, but in the case of the court, they never make a mistake. And if you think they do, you're going to lose your case. You have to go in there just educating and changing it to an Article 3 court, and or changing it to that the trustee is actually the judge or the clerk and not you. You are the beneficiary, and that's one of the most important things.
Yes. Yeah, and it's going back to what I said earlier. Being in honor is really important.
Yeah.
Because once you're in dishonor, then you're acting as the debtor, you're acting as the defendant, you're already guilty, you've already lost, right? So
That's right. Now,
right?
hold on. Before you go on, just real important.
Yeah.
We hear this all the time, to stay in honor. To you, what does that mean? And how does a person get out of honor?
Okay. So if you begin with the presumption, right, you have the attitude that you're the sovereign and everything that's coming at you is an offer, you can either accept the offer or you can counteroffer, right? So that's honor. If you argue or you're silent, that's dishonor. And you don't have to do that because you're a sovereign, right? So you don't have any obligation to anybody unless you harm them. That's one thing. I'm not talking about that. But
Yeah, no, we're all nonviolent in everything that we do.
yeah, we're peaceful and honorable, peaceful.
That's right.
All that stuff. And honest. So everything is. You don't have to fight. You don't have to defend. You don't have to argue. And you can just counteroffer. That's conditional acceptance. Yeah, that's the way of the sovereign. And then you're going to stay in honor. And so that works all the time. But
it does, when you stay in honor, and then all of us, we have a saying, the first one out of honor loses. But then when you do stay in honor and you are getting movement, it becomes a lot of fun. It becomes a lot of fun.
Yeah, knowing the question, this is why you have to know the code. And the Supreme Court's crystal clear on this, right? I don't have that case handy right now. I can provide that to you, but the Supreme Court's clear on this. If you're dealing with a government, and all of us are, whether we want to or not, because they're constantly making offers of contract to us.
That's right.
Offering, hey, volunteer for this, volunteer for that, right? But come over here, be one of ours, right? So you have to know the law, and you take the risk of them overstepping their authority. You just have to, right? And that's it is what it is, right? So whether that's and there's so many examples of that. We could talk for hours on that.
It's very true. Well, we're just about out of time now. It's been amazing. A lot of information come out. What do you want your audience to know? Is there anything else that you have on your mind that you want them to know?
I'd like them to think about this. Number one, I've already talked about, which is, and it's black letter law. Take a look at my videos, soundbite 3 and 4. You are, in a state of the union, a living man or woman, you are sovereign. You're king or a queen without subjects, right? So it's black letter law. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Lots of evidence there. But then the question is, are you truly safe? Are you truly sovereign if you're standing alone, right? So you got one here, you got one here. That's where we are right now. And so a collective self-governance is when we start to reclaim our government, which is, if you take a look at the Declaration of Independence, our founders said that governments are formed among men and women. They used that word. They didn't say by, because if they said by, the government would be over there to be downtown.
Right.
It's like, no, the government's among us. We are the government. Right. So so that's an assembly. And there's a lot of assemblies that are doing things right. There's some that are not doing things quite so right, whatever. But that's where we need to move in states of the union to reclaim our Republican form of government. That's what it is, right? We haven't had those for 161 years. We've lost the kind of a lot of the knowledge of how to do that. And that's going to take a long time to do that. But that is the proper form of self-governance, collective self-governance for sovereigns.
So with the assembly in this, just give us one example of them, something they're not doing right and something that they're doing very right.
Well, for example.
It's a long story. No.
That's a whole nother, right? So there are some people out there who have the philosophy that you can actually reclaim a state, and they have a state assembly without reclaiming the counties. And so what that means is you could have 5 guys in a room in one town in a state, and they're going to reclaim the whole state. Well, no, they're not legitimate.
Right.
So, for example, another way to do that, the right way to do that would be, look, we're not going to be able to reclaim the state until we have a representative number of counties. What's that? Well, I think it's around 3/4, and there's a long story there. So in Washington, that would be 30 out of 39 counties would actually have to be reclaimed before we can reclaim the state. So that's just one example.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. There are assemblies in every state happening right now, and we know a lot of them, and they're doing some good work. So I'm sure they're applying the wisdom that you just garnered to us. Ron, it's been a pleasure. It's been wonderful talking with you. I wish you the very, very highest in all of the activities that you're doing, all the people you're working with. Appreciate that you are truly an American in action. And so, I wish that for all people. People, we have to get into action. So if you don't know what to do, contact Ron at Self-Governance Gurus. Is that .com?
No, we don't have a website yet, but we have the best place to go is the videos, and then also the Corsizio.com. That's where our classes are, and there's a way to contact us there.
Okay, good. And that's where they can actually send you an email as well.
I believe so, yeah.
And do you have an email that has Self-Governance Gurus on that?
It's at tutanota.com.
All right, Ron. Good to see you. God bless you. And here's a true American in action. We love that all the action that he's doing and helping a lot of people, assisting them, including himself. And we just want to say from Hidden Truth News and AmericansInAction.info, we love you. Continue on. Let's win this. So be it. All right, Ron. Good night.